So there are so many music production schools all over the place. And there's a lot more popping up too. With the birth, I think, of electronic music and EDM kind of being brought to the forefront of our musical culture, things like music production have gotten a lot more popular. So music production degrees, music production schools, music production education are all these big topics now that are blowing up, and a lot of people want to go to school just to learn music production. So it's been asked, okay, Mark, like music production schools, are they worth it? I mean, initially you might be like, oh yeah, of course they're worth it. Why would they not be worth it? But the answer is, it really depends. That's what I'm going to say when it comes to music production schools. It really depends. I think it depends on a couple different things. And in this video, I'm going to give you the full scope of what you need to know if you're considering, going to a music production school, if you're considering getting a music production degree, and really give you the aspects of what you need to know. Now remember, starting off, music production itself is a skill. And in order to succeed or make it in the music production world, it doesn't really matter if you have a degree or not. Now, I've talked about this before a little bit in other videos that, for example, for me, I used to be an accountant. And when it comes to accounting, you had to have, especially for a lot of these firms, I'm pretty sure legally as well, you needed an accounting degree from an accredited university in order to work in some of these big firms. If you didn't have the degree, it didn't matter how much you knew about accounting, you could not work there. When it comes to music production though, no music production studio or producer or anybody would ever say, oh, you didn't go to a music production school? You don't have a music production degree? Sorry, I'm not gonna hire you. I'm not gonna have you work here, right? And obviously it depends on what you wanna do in music production. But overall, the biggest thing that I can tell you, especially when it comes to that, is music production is a very experience-based industry that more cares about your portfolio. It's the same thing as, for example, being a painter. Like, yeah, you can go to art school and learn how to paint. You go to photography school and learn how to take pictures. But at the end of the day, the jobs you're gonna get in photography or art, for example, are all based off your portfolio. So now, bring it back, you may be saying, okay, that makes sense, but music production schools, like, are they worth it? Is it worth it to go to music production school? And my honest answer is, it depends from this aspect. In my opinion, I think it mostly depends on money. That's actually what I'd say. Given everything I just said about the experience aspect of music and music production, I think it really depends on money. Because when you go to a music production school, you're going to get two things. Very, very, very important. You're going to get mainly two things. One, the learning curve of learning music production is going to be increased, right? This is not anything mind-blowing. When you go to school for it, you're going to learn way faster than if you're on YouTube trying to learn from YouTube videos. Now, don't get me wrong. You can learn music production without ever going to a music production school or getting a degree. For me, I learned everything kind of teaching myself, working with other producers, all that kind of stuff. That's the best way to learn. And a lot of producers, especially the big ones in hip-hop and electronic, never went to a school. They just learned from being in the studio with the right types of people, practicing hours and hours and hours on their DAW and mixing and mastering and understanding all the technicalities that come with music. And as a result, they've gotten to where they are because of that. So remember that even if, you go to a music production school, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be an amazing producer. That's something talent and just experience and working hard are all factors that go into it. For example, you can, learn everything you can about photography, going to school and taking all these classes. But does that mean you're going to be a really good photographer out in the field actually doing it? Well, not necessarily. So although music production schools give you the tools and essentially help you open that door a little bit easier, that doesn't mean they're going to help you walk through it any easier, if that makes sense. So remember, one, they're going to speed up that curve, but again, that's all dependent upon you. Like, you can take everything, and we've all met those people probably that they might know everything about a specific subject, but with actually doing that field or that subject, they're just not as good. They're more of a knowledge base than actual, doing it, if that makes sense. So the first thing is, it will help speed up your learning curve. The second thing, and this to me is the biggest one, is you'll gain a lot of connections. So schools that are more specialized, like say not only music production, but electronic music production, schools, for example, like Icon Collective is a great example of that in LA. Those places, the connections are massive. And this is why, for example, this is a little, quick side note, but it's important. This is why, for example, when you look at MBAs, or when you get a Master's of Business Administration, or basically a graduate degree in business, this is why a lot of people want to go to Harvard or MIT or these top-notch schools. Now, is it because the amount of information you're going to learn there is going to be the best? It's going to be good, but to be honest, especially if you look at most MBAs, like the top 100 schools for an MBA, the differences are kind of minimal in terms of the true education. The factor, or the biggest factor that comes to going to Harvard or MIT is the fact that everyone in your class is probably going to be doing something important, right? They're probably going to be going to a really, really big company. They're going to be starting their own company. So building those connections and networking is just as important, if anything, more important when you get your MBA than just learning about business, right? Same thing when it comes to music production schools. When it comes to Icon Collective, for example, learning music production is super important, and you'll learn a lot about how to make a really good EDM track, for example. But the biggest thing that's really going to propel you is building the connections where they're like, hey, you know what? You kind of have this Moombahton sound in your music. I actually know a Moombahton producer, or I have a connection to Mad Decent. I have a connection to Fool's Gold. You produce some bass style music. I actually know somebody in Ausla or Skrillex's label. You know what? I might send this to them. Or, you know what? I've seen you DJ. You're really good on the decks. You have a lot of good technical skill, and you're very, very technical on the decks. You know what? I'm going to send a sample DJ mix to, I don't know, Laid Back Luke, for example. I'm just making this up. I don't know if they know these people. They might. I'm just making this up. But I'm going to send it to Laid Back Luke because you should open for him or something like that, right? I've heard of DJs going to Icon Collective, learning a lot about music production, and then later on getting shows in Vegas, for example, or in LA, just because they built the right connections, basically going off Icon Collective's basically database of people, right? And the alumni of Icon Collective is off the charts. I mean, you have everyone from Nightmare to Mac J to Black Gummy. I mean, the list goes on. And again, this video is not mainly for Icon Collective. I'm just using them as a very specific example. But overall, basically summing this all up, you really get two things when it comes to a music production school. Like I said, one, the learning curve is sped up, and two, you build great connections. So after all this, after throwing it all on the table, you may be like, okay, well, Mark, what is the biggest determining factor? And for me, I think it's honestly money. I think if you're somebody that you're going to slave away, to spend thousands of dollars to go to these schools and try as best you can to get a degree and learn as much as you can, you may be better off just doing it on your own or going into a studio, seeing if you can intern at a music production studio and learn that way. See if you can intern at, a label that does music and build connections that way. So I think there are a lot of ways you can work around the benefits of music production schools. However, if you're somebody like, you know what, Mark, I'm going to be honest, money's an issue for me. I have a rich dad, I have a rich mom, or I started my own company and now I have a ton of money, but now I want to go into music. Money's not a factor for me. I'd say 100% do a music production school, right? I'd say if you have the money and money's not an issue, 100% go into a music production school. But obviously in this day and age, money is a big factor. Obviously, it's always a factor, especially for a college or any type of a learning program or educational program. So I'd say if money's a huge issue where it's going to be close to impossible for you to finance it or it's going to really put you in severe debt, don't do a music production school. I think you can learn everything on your own. You can build those connections on your own. Is it going to be harder? Yes. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's probably going to be harder, but you can still do it. It's not like I said, it's not like accounting that if you don't get the degree, you basically cannot do accounting at all. In accounting, if you want to do accounting, you 100% need a degree to work at the bigger firms. But in music production, like I said way in the beginning of this video, it is all experience-based. And if you have a good portfolio, if you hustle, if you learn as much as you can, if you're in those studios, if you're interning for labels and building these connections, and someone asks to see your tracks or your mixes or your masters or basically your collection of your own music productions, that's going to sell way more than any piece of paper or any degree. However, if money's not an issue, I'd say go for it. So I hope this video was helpful. Obviously, I bounced around to a bunch of different topics, but I really wanted to give you the full scope. Because obviously, when it comes to going to any school, especially say if you don't live in LA, you now have to think about, if you want to go to Icon Collective, for example, flying to LA, maybe auditioning or, applying to be an icon. Like say if you get it, you have to think about housing, food, what is it going to happen in terms of transferring the logistics of you not living in your original city or town. Now you have to live in LA and switch everything over, right? So there are a lot of factors that go into going to any college, university, any educational program. So that's why I want to kind of give you the full scope of all this, because obviously there's a lot that goes into this. But I hope this video was helpful. And in addition to, if you have any personal questions, that you want to ask me, feel free to post in the comment section. I'm super active also on my channel. And this is something that's come up a lot in some videos, asking about music production schools and degrees. Are they worth it or not? So I really hope this video helps you out. And no matter what, remember that regardless if you're getting the degree or not, regardless if you go to school or not, it's all about hard work, dedication, and trying to make your tracks the best they possibly can.